For today, we're going to be combining the lessons from yesterday, and we're going to be looking into what if I have three terms and my first number is not a 1. It was easy when it was a 1. So in this case, I'm still going to want to start with my X method. I'm going to be looking for two numbers that when I add them is equal to 57, which we can see here where my 57 came from. But when I multiply my numbers in this case, I'm looking for two numbers that multiplied equals negative 378. Now, the way I came out with a negative 378, I multiplied my first and my last numbers. All right, they multiplied is equal to negative, so the signs are different. So I'm going to start with 1 times 378. Remember, my 1, I'm going to keep on increasing it as far as I need to go. So let me go 378 divided by 2. That gives me 189. When I subtract this number, it is not 57. All right, so 378 divided by 3, that gives me 126. Yeah, this doesn't work either. 378 divided by 4, it gives me a decimal. So it doesn't work. 378 divided by 5 gives me a decimal. It doesn't work. 378 divided by 6, it gives me 63. When I subtract these numbers, I get 57. So that's what I want. Remember, I'm subtracting my numbers because I have different signs. If I had the same sign, I will be adding my numbers. I want the biggest one to be positive because positive 57. So I'm going to go 63 minus 6. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, these numbers that I'm going to get, I'm going to split my middle term. Let me write this as 7x squared plus 63x minus 6x minus 54. All I did was split my middle term. Now that I have 4 terms, yesterday we saw that 4 terms, I do it by grouping. Let me take a look at the first 2. Let me divide each by 7x. So I'm going to get x plus 9. When I take a look at the last 2, let me divide each by negative 6. Now I'm going to get x plus 9. So my factors are x plus 9 and 7x minus 6. I have to split my middle term when my first number is not a 1. All right, let's take a look at question number 6. I'm looking for two numbers that when I add them is equal to negative 17, but when I multiply them is equal to 60. And the 60 because I multiplied my first and my last number. They multiplied equals positive, so that means the signs are the same. They add up to negative, so I'm going to go negative and negative. So I'm going to start thinking 1 times 60. Once again, my 1, I keep on increasing as far as I need to go. So then I'm going to say 60 divided by 2, that's 30. When I add my numbers, it's not 17. Now 60 divided by 3 is 20. When I add my numbers, it's not 17. So I continue going. 60 divided by 4 is 15. That one doesn't work either. 60 divided by 5 is 12. Yeah, my numbers when I add them is 17. So I'm going to split my middle term. I'm going to go 2p squared minus 5p minus 12p plus 30. Looking at the first 2 terms, I'm going to divide each by p. So that gives me 2p minus 5. Looking at the last 2 terms, let me divide each by a negative 6. That gives me 2p minus 5. So my factors are 2p minus 5 and p minus 6. The 2p minus 5 is because it's the parentheses that they do match. The p minus 6 is what I have outside of the parentheses. Let's take a look at my number 7. When I add my numbers, I want this to be negative 88. When I multiply my numbers, I want this to be negative 180. I multiply the first and the last. So I'm thinking 1 times 180. Because they multiply, coming back a little to the x, they multiply to negative. I know the signs are different. So I'm looking for two numbers that when I subtract them equals 88. So that one doesn't work. For this list, I'm going to go as far as I need to go. So I'm thinking 180 divided by 2 is 90. When I subtract them, it is 88. So that's what I'm looking at. Plus 2 minus 90. In this case, the bigger number has to be negative. All right, so I'm just going to go 9b squared plus 2b minus 90b minus 20. Let's take a look at the first two terms. I can take a b out. Numbers wise, 9 and 2, I can only divide it by 1. So I'm going to leave it as b. So I get 9b plus 2. I divided each by b. Looking at the last two terms, let me divide each by negative 10. That gives me 9b plus 2. So my factors are 9b plus 2 and b minus 10. Lastly, let's take a look at number 8. I'm looking for two numbers that when I add them is equal to 59, but when I multiply them, it's equal to negative 252. I multiply my first and my last number. They multiply to a negative, so I know the signs are different. I'm going to go 1 times 252. Looking for the two numbers that multiply equals 252. Remember this list, once again, I'm going to go as far as I need to go. So I'm thinking 252 divided by 2, that gives me 126. I subtract them is not 59, so I continue. 252 divided by 3, it gives me 84. That one doesn't work either. 252 divided by 4, that gives me 63. This one works. When I subtract them, it's 59. So I'm looking at plus 63 minus 4. For the purpose of our work on these lessons, my factors will always work. Eventually will work. So I'm just going to go 9x squared plus 63x minus 4x minus 28. Looking at the first two, I'm going to divide each by 9x. That gives me x plus 7. Looking at the last two, let me divide each by a negative 4. That gives me x plus 7. So my factors in this case are x plus 7 and 9x minus 4.